continue last week's stories that we were talking about the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashad. And the reason we were mentioning stories from the Rebbe Rashad was because it was just his birthday. And so once we got into it, I figured let's just try to give you the full, the commonly known stories. And then of course we'll go back to our usual. So the one of the stories about the Rebbe Rashad is a story of, in 1905 there was a convention of rabbis in Vilnius, which I believe is Vilna, and it's but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe some of you know the different areas. Is Vilnius?
Lithuania.
It was Vilna.
Is it the same as Vilna? What's known as Vilna?
Yes.
Yes, that is Vilna. It's the capital of Lithuania.
It is Vilna.
Jerusalem of the North, I used to call it.
Okay, I'm going to mute everyone now. So basically, there was this rabbinic conference there with many of the great leaders of rabbinic leaders of Europe. And the reason for the conference was because the Russian government was making decrees about education, and they were trying to put certain requirements on all yeshivas that they should study secular education. And the yeshivas, of course, were not set up for that, and they absolutely were not interested in it, because most of the studies that they would be forced to study is, first of all, it's not appropriate to, for the Jewish children to ruin their minds with the communist way of, or the Goyish way of thinking, and the whole purpose of the yeshiva was to give them pure education of holiness and Torah and God's wisdom. And so the government wanted to start, and really the truth is, once the government got their way with one thing, they were going to obviously go further and prohibit the next thing. And then they knew, they saw, the writing on the wall. They saw where it was going to lead to. They saw the domino effect that was going to happen. And so they had this assembly, and it was very clear, the Russian minister made it very clear that if the rabbis don't withdraw from their opposition, there would be pogroms and other problems for the Jewish community. And so at the conference, the Rebbe Rashad requested permission to speak. And when he got up to speak, he gave a very powerful and passionate talk about how important it is that we're being threatened, that they're going to bring pogroms, and how unjust this is, and we have to announce before everyone that just our bodies are given over to exile, but not our souls, and anything that involves our souls, Torah and mitzvahs, our only sovereign is Hashem. And that's what he passionately put forth, and he knew at the time that there were informers inside the room that were going to tell the government, and he really risked his life to do this. And he actually fainted right when he finished speaking from fear and knowing, what was in for him. And as soon as he left the hall, of course, he was placed under house arrest, and not surprising. And afterwards, one of the great Lithuanian giants, Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik, he came to visit the Rebbe Rashad. And when he came to visit, he found the Rebbe Rashad crying. So he asked him, why are you crying? We did what we could, you did the best you could. So the Rebbe Rashad responded, and he said, but the objective was not accomplished. We did what we could, but we didn't accomplish. And that's quite a powerful message. You see, there's two ways of doing mitzvahs. There's a lot of people, their purpose of doing mitzvahs is they want to do what's right, and they want to get the reward. If you want to just get the reward in heaven, then as long as you do what you needed to do, then you're going to receive your reward. You did as much as you could, So that is, that's great if your goal, if your interest is reward. But if your goal is for Hashem and for the benefit of Yiddishkeit, and that the world should be a receptacle for holiness. The world should be a better place, a place of kedusha, of sanctity. Then you're not satisfied if you did your job. You did as much as you could. You want that Hashem should have the ultimate goal. He should have a dwelling place down here on earth. And you want that, any mission that at least you're part of, you want it to be successful. It's not enough that you did your part and you tried, and in a certain sense you're really not satisfied by the fact that you did your part. So I think it really shows the difference between thinking about yourself and thinking about Hashem. I think it also shows a certain clarity as well in what position a Rebbe takes, meaning the Rebbe sees straight through to know what is the right stance. Because in this situation, you have to understand there are two ways of looking at it. If the government is claiming they're going to bring pogroms, and they're not really, telling you that you can't keep Shabbos. They're telling you that they want to institute secular studies. So in a certain sense, there could be other ways of seeing this, that maybe, this shouldn't be considered so terrible. And in a certain sense, if you're going to oppose it, you might be bringing suffering to the Jewish people. And so taking the stance that the Rebbe Rashad took, it shows he has tremendous shoulders to carry that responsibility and to know what the right thing to do was. That means he had such a clarity in what is the correct stance. And that's something that, it's not just like a doctor says, oh, let's try this medicine. Okay, we'll see how it goes, and just, we'll see if this heals you. And if not, we'll try something else. Here you see this was like a life and death situation, and the Rebbe Rashad had such clarity. He was passionate about the stance he took, and knew what was right and what was the correct thing to do. So that's my few thoughts on this story. If anyone else would like to share some of their thoughts, you're welcome to. Yes.
Yes. It's interesting. This problem still has not gone away today. In England, the government wants the Jewish schools to be teaching about homosexuality, about things that are not appropriate for the Jewish schools, and they're threatening to withdraw certification from schools that don't comply. And it's a very big problem right now in Great Britain.
Wow, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes, yes. I have children and grandchildren over there, and in their schools, they're fighting this problem terribly.
Wow. It's, they should just take a lesson from the history. All the great doctors, lawyers, and accountants are all Jewish, and they've gone. They've done quite well. If you want, or what do they need all the other knowledge for?
Well, it's interesting. One of the great rabbis has come out with an article in one of the British newspapers, and he says, if this goes through and you withdraw certification from our schools, then it will be a badge of honor to graduate from a school that does not have certification. Yeah.
Yes, that's a great line. Great line. Which rabbi? Do you know the name of that rabbi?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know.
It's a great line.
Rabbi, we're having the same problem in America.
Yes, there was something going on in New York. They were trying to do something. I don't remember.
All over, even the South, everywhere. Especially with the Orthodox in New York State.
That's what I was saying. New York there was some story going on in New York, and probably still in the middle of it but it started like a year ago, I think, or maybe 2 years ago. But yeah,
you have all these.
There's definitely something going on there, yeah, with the secular studies.
But 1905, you said, that's when a mass exodus was leaving Russia and the Ukraine to come to America. Because my grandfather came in 1902 for somewhat the same reason.
Interesting. So I guess.
Well, it never ends. It never ends until we stand our ground and leave wherever.
Now, I'm going to share with you another story. This one is a very famous story with the Rebbe Rashad when he was, I don't think I said it last week, when he was 4, or correct me if I said it already, he was 4 or 5, and he was, it was his birthday, and he was visiting his grandfather on his birthday. His grandfather was the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe. And when he entered his grandfather's room, he started crying, and he was asked, "Why are you crying?" So he told his grandfather that he studied in school that Hashem revealed himself to Avraham, and that was what we read about 2 weeks ago. And he said, "Why doesn't Hashem appear to me?" And so he felt really hurt that Hashem. Did I say the story last week?
No.
So he was really hurt that Hashem didn't appear himself Hashem didn't appear to him. Hashem appeared to Abraham. What about to him? So he was 4 and 5 years old. He wanted Hashem to appear to him. So the Tzemach Tzedek, his grandfather, replied. He said, when a Jew, a tzaddik, realizes at the age of 99 that he still has more to serve Hashem, he still needs to circumcise himself, then and perfect himself more, then he is worthy that Hashem should reveal himself to him. That was the answer. And what we see from the story, we see a number of things, I think, from this story. First of all, the idea that a child could feel that he wants Hashem to reveal himself to him, that he has a desire for Hashem. It really shows a certain purity and holiness. And of course, he was a great tzaddik even at a young age. But it does have a lesson for us. The fact that the story was repeated to us shows that we have to try to, we should hope. We should reach that type of thirst or hunger that he had for Hashem to reveal himself. That should be something that we should want. And, a lot of us, we get sidetracked with all the daily obligations and, challenges that we deal with. And so we sometimes lose total focus on our Yiddishkeit. And even within Yiddishkeit, sometimes we get sidetracked within Yiddishkeit with, doing this mitzvah, that mitzvah, and we forget about Hashem and how it's all boils down to Hashem, Hashem's commandments. Hashem's telling us to do this. Hashem wants a relationship with us. And do we want that relationship as well with him? Do we think about that? Do we have a thirst, for a hunger for Hashem, that Hashem should appear to us? And to the extent that the child was weeping, the Rebbe Rashad was crying that Hashem didn't appear to him. Are we on that level? Have we, at our age, have we reached that level? And that's one thought. And then the second thing is what the answer that the Tzemach Tzedek gave to his grandson, and that is that when you're 99 and you realize that you still have to make a major change in your life, circumcision at that age was not a simple thing. It was probably harder than open heart surgery nowadays. Just thinking of Avraham doing it to himself with absolutely no pain. There was no aspirin or Advil afterwards, or definitely no anesthesia. Avraham did it to himself, and I'm sure the knives those days were not as sharp and smooth as they make them today. And yet Avraham circumcised himself at that age, and he acknowledged that he still needs to do more to serve Hashem. It also tells us that are we thriving? Are we growing in Yiddishkeit? Are we doing more? Are we making the leaps that we are supposed to at our age? In other words, we are much younger than 99. And are we taking those leaps? And even if we have taken a few, are we continuing to take those leaps that Abraham did? And when he did that, he really he merited to have this revelation. And I guess what that means is that if we don't have the revelation, it means we haven't taken those leaps. So it's a good way of indicator where we're up to. If we've reached those, if we've really taken those leaps, then we should be able to have such a revelation. So it's a very famous story, but I think it's a very important story. If anyone would like to say anything about that, you may, or have anything you want to add. Okay, the next story is a story of a chassid, and it has to do with the desire that a chassid has. A chassid is a follower of a Rebbe. A chassid, the desire that a chassid has to hear a lecture from his Rebbe, Chassidic discourse. So, very, very interesting that over the since the Chassidic movement began, Chassidim would often travel to their Rebbes because, number one, they wanted to be in their holy presence, and number two, they loved hearing the deep insights from their teacher. It was always very inspirational. It was much greater than any comedy show or enjoyment, concert that you might enjoy, when a chassid would go to hear his Rebbe say words of insights into the Torah, for a chassid, that was like the highlight of his year. This was the highlight of his life, to be able to enjoy hearing such great insights. And the reason, I at least my understanding is, it's very easy to find a rabbi that will come up with some insight, but you don't always know if it's 100% the true meaning. But when a Rebbe says it, he has a certain revelation from above, that his insights are Torah from Sinai, meaning they are 100% true. And even if there's questions on it, it doesn't mean that it's not correct. It just means you have to figure out how to answer the questions. But it's considered Torah from Sinai, and what could be greater than having the revelation at Sinai? When Chassidim hear their Rebbe, it's like they feel it's almost like a revelation at Sinai. That's how they look at it. And Shechina medaberes mitoich troinoi. That means that when the Jewish people heard Moses giving his lectures, they understood it to be God speaking through Moses's mouth. Shechina medaberes, the dwelling of Hashem was speaking from the mouth of Moses, and that's the way a chassid looks at his Rebbe, that the Shechina, the divine presence, is speaking through the Rebbe's mouth. So it doesn't mean that all any other rabbi that speaks it's not correct. I don't mean to minimize the greatness of other scholars, but generally it's a different level, because when you hear a nice insight, a nice thought from a rabbi, it's more based on intellect. It's intellectually stimulating. But this is purity, this is holiness, this is pure revelation stimulating. It's a different level than just the intellect. And so here's the story. Rabbi Beryl of Bashankovic, he was so hungry to hear some spiritual inspiration from his Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashad. So he set out by foot to Lubavitch. This is a long journey, and but thinking about how he's going to be able to hear words of Chassidic insight made every step worthwhile. And I must say, this is not uncommon. Chassidim, even when people suffered poverty, they somehow would come up with enough money to travel to their Rebbe's. I was always shocked to see a lot of people from Israel, who I know, probably had to save every dime, penny, in order to travel. They used to come, every few years to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and it's quite. I must say, it's quite amazing to see how they would, take that trip. Not having, I'm not talking about the wealthy people. I'm talking about the regular and individual. They somehow would come up with the money, scrape together the money to travel. And but this is nowadays. Imagine what it was like in Russia when they didn't have cars. They didn't have, it was truly a dangerous trip, and then for cold, Anyway, so this Beryl set out by foot. And when he finally arrived, it turned out that the Rebbe Rashad was not there. He was not in town. The reason was the Rebbe Rashad was not a well person. He was constantly traveling to certain mud baths and health locations where they would guess, hot springs or things that were for health purposes. He had to travel, and so it just turned out that he had taken leave to the countryside, and so this Rabbi Beryl, he asked around, how do you get to that place where the Rebbe Rashad had gone? So he gave him directions. He said, this is, somewhere along, go this direction, and who knows how long it was. Anyway, Rabbi Beryl did not even stop to rest in Lubavitch. He just continued his journey. He continued on to find the Rebbe Rashad in one of these countryside areas, and he arrived, and he was told that the Rebbe Rashad is not up to giving any Chassidic discourses, so he's not giving, for some time now, any discourses. So Rabbi Beryl was heartbroken. He had just come all this way. Who knows how, he, with all his tzaras and, and the travel, and anyway, so he was heartbroken and looked a wreck, looked really sad. Anyway, there was a simple Jew that was like the shamash there. He always helped out. He would bring the food to the Rebbe, and he made sure that there was a minyan there, and so this shamash, he looked and he saw this yid that looked so sad, and so he said, "Oh, it must be, this guy must be hungry. Probably he hasn't eaten." So he asked him, "Could I offer you some bed, some food, money?" And Beryl said, "No, I came here to hear Chassidus, and I came a long way, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen." So immediately the shamash came running to the Rebbe Rashad, and I think the shamash wasn't familiar really with the way the Rebbe Rashad normally. This was not like an official shamash. He was just he happened to be in the countryside and he was helping out, so he didn't know that that's there were times when the Rebbe Rashad would just that was it. He's not giving Chassidus, but this shamash was not familiar with the regular ways of the Rebbe Rashad, and he came running to the Rebbe Rashad. He says, "Rebbe, if there's someone that's hungry, I always, if I see anyone hungry, I provide them with milk or with cheese, But here, this person is hungry for Chassidus. I can't give it to him. You have to. Could you please give him some Chassidus? He's hungry. He's starving. So you got to help him out." And he's miserable. He looks a wreck. So an hour later, the Rebbe Rashad came out, invited him in to his office to hear a mimer, to hear a Chassidic discourse. And Rabbi Beryl sat there, totally, his face aglow, totally engrossed in the mimer, enjoying every moment. Such it was like the Garden of Eden, and when he left, this shamash, who was also a dairy farmer, he entered the room, and he saw the pleasantness, the enjoyment that this Beryl had, and he said, he asked the Rebbe Rashad, when I go to Gan Eden, when I go to the Garden of Eden, will I be able to enjoy the same enjoyment that Rabbi Beryl felt, that I see his face aglow? Will I merit to have that same enjoyment? So the Rebbe Rashad answered him that every time you recite Tehillim, the book of Psalms from cover to cover, you merit a special reward. And in addition, you will merit to understand the Tehillim on a deeper level in the world to come. So he was very satisfied. And as soon as he left the Rebbe's room, he immediately recited Tehillim with tremendous fervor and confidence that one day he's going to get that great joy that Rabbi Beryl had when he heard Chassidus from the Rebbe. So I think this is a great story showing the unique, number one, the unique relationship of a Rebbe with a Chassid, and the understanding of the meaning of traveling to your Rebbe, and what that really what it really was about. It's it's a much, we think of it as in our terms, but you have to really you have to understand how the real Chassidim, how they felt, how they pictured how they felt about their relationship with their Rebbe, and it really makes you change your understanding. Like, let's say if you want to travel to the Ohel, to one of the Chassidic Rebbe's grave sites, you picture it differently. You picture like the holiness and the purity, and it's a whole different level. You look at it as this is the Garden of Eden. I think it is your view. I guess we also see another thing, and that is that the same way we would love to have good pizza, a nice Danish. That's how the Chassidim love to hear, love Yiddishkeit. So it's really a wake up call. What are our desires? What is our enjoyment? What do we do? What do we consider our pleasures? And are we childish in certain things? Like, have we grown up from the pleasures that do we put too much emphasis on the certain food and other types of enjoyment? And should we be concentrating? Should our enjoyment be in a more adult level, similar to the Chassidim, of loving to hear a word of Torah, especially a pure word of Torah that's untainted and straight from the Shekhinah, from the divine? Is that where our desires are? Or would we like to get an extra 2 hours of sleep? Is that our desire? So that's really the question we have to ask ourselves. And also the meaning of saying the book, of reciting Psalms. Look at the purity of this Shamish, this guy who is a milk farmer, the dairy farmer, how he came to help out the Rebbe, and whenever someone was hungry, he was running to help them with food. And here he felt helpless. Like, how does he help this poor Yid? And he came running to the Rebbe to help give Chassidus to this man. You see there's a certain simplicity in how he rushed to say Tehillim. When the Rebbe Rashad told him about the beauty of reciting Tehillim, rushed to do it with extra excitement and passion. Okay, any thoughts on that story? Anyone want to say anything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's interesting that in that story, Rabbi Beryl's enthusiasm was contagious. And that's true for all of us. We don't realize, but we are role models to everyone who is watching us at any time. It's a big responsibility, but it's true.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Very good point. That's interesting. It's and especially nowadays, we should know this better than ever, because I mean, who knows how many people are videoing us? So
Yeah.
it's not just what they're seeing, but there's potential for our whatever we do. Who knows how many millions of people might end up seeing it? It might have been caught on video and pictures, and who knows if we're to put on the internet. So you're right, we have a huge responsibility nowadays, especially always we have a huge responsibility, because people learn a lot more from seeing from the way we act than what we say. It has a much stronger impact. People learn from example much more than anything you say is minimal,
Yes.
nothing, insignificant compared to what we do. So that's for sure. Great point, Gloria. Okay. So here's a story, more like a miracle story, that also about the Rebbe Rashad. And this was a story of a group of Chassidim that they were on a train to see their Rebbe, traveling to the Rebbe Rashad, and somehow there was a young man from another train car that came and popped into their train and into their train car and asked them, "Are you traveling to the Rebbe?" So they said, "Yeah, sure, that's where we're heading." So this man said, "Well, I owe my life to the Rebbe." So they said, "Well, tell us your story. What do you mean?" So he gave them his story. He used to work in a match factory, and after a number of years, the match factory, he got married. He was established, and they were comfortable. But after some years, the match factory burned down, and I guess they didn't have insurance in those days, and so he was broken. He was left without a penny, and he decided to travel. Well, he traveled to his father's house to live, because they didn't have any money to pay their rent. And on their way, or shortly thereafter, he met these Chassidim. Then they said, "Why don't you come with us to our Rebbe?" So he said, "Okay, I got nothing to lose. Why not?" So he traveled with the Chassidim as they went to the Rebbe, and he told his story to the Rebbe Rashad about how his whole business went down the drain. The factory burned down, no job, and the Rebbe told him, he says, "Listen, go to Kovna and rent a store there, and your wife will fashion hats and you'll sell them in the store." That's what the Rebbe Rashad told him. Now, he thought to himself, he says, "What do I have to travel to Kovna to have a hat store? People here in Dvinsk, they also wear hats. I could just open a store here in Dvinsk. But why do I have to travel, 200 kilometers away to Kovna?" But the Rebbe said, "No, travel to Kovna," and that's what the Rebbe said. So that's what he did. He traveled. It seems like he asked, the Rebbe Rashad, I'll open a hat store here. But the Rebbe Rashad told him, "You have to go there, and that's where you should open it." So that's what he did. Packed everything up, and they set out for Kovna. And first, they had one problem after another. They couldn't pay. The rent for a store was very expensive in the main city center. And they finally decided that they'll rent a store on the outskirts. So they rent it's at least relatively affordable. So they rented a store, a very small store, and they displayed hats that his wife had fashioned, and sure enough, reality sunk in. No one came to their store. There's nothing, zero. And of course, they're on the outskirts of town. So who's traveling there? This is not in the main plaza, where the main center of town. And so no one popped. The hats were untouched and just started gathering dust. And of course, he started to break down and cry and realize this is absolutely crazy. We traveled all the way here. And what was the Rebbe Rashad thinking? I'm going to go here to open a hat store. And anyway, he's started, he was crying and uncontrollably. Finally, he started calming down. And all of a sudden, he hears a carriage rattling down the street. And this very wealthy looking man comes out, and he's asks about the price of the hats. And so the man is thinking, and he sees that this the store owner was, his eyes are puffy and red. He says, why do you look so sad? So the this store owner said, well, let me tell you my story. I used to have a match factory, and burnt down, or worked at a match factory anyway. So and then my rabbi told me to travel here and open a hat store, but I don't anyway. This wealthy looking man, he says to this man, he says, your rabbi did not make any mistake. He sent you here for a reason, because I have a brother that owns a match factory in Kiev, and it's been a few weeks, and he has a machine that's totally broken, and can't find anyone to fix the machine. You worked in you had a match factory, or you worked in a match factory. You're the perfect person to go and help my brother out. He's going to pay you so tremendous. He's going to really give you a huge amount of money if you fix the machine, and you'll get a reward, a handsome reward, and you got to go. You got to travel there. And so this store owner, he says, listen, I'm not a mechanic. I worked in a match factory, but I'm not a mechanic. Nope, you are the right guy. You have to go. I'm giving you the money now to travel. Here's some money. Here's a little extra pocket money. And he gives him, some money to take a train and to go to Kiev. And he says, if you fix the machine, you're going to get 500 rubles. That was a huge sum. And you'll also get a job there. You'll be able to continue working there. So sure enough, after a few days, he managed to fix the machine that was broken. And he ended up not only getting a job there, but he got raises, and he's still working there until today. That's what he was telling these Chassidim. So the Chassidim heard this story, and he says, "Listen, and I'm deeply indebted to your Rebbe." That's what he said. So that's the miracle story, and that miracle story is tremendous story, because what it really shows is how a Rebbe sees so far. You know, he sees such a there's such a divine inspiration in his words, because how could the Rebbe have been so confident to send this man to Kovna to go open a hat store, you know, where the man had no connection to dream that, you know, and yet that was what got this made all the connections that was necessary to get this man to stop and give him information about his brother and give him a long-term job. And so that's it really shows how there's truly divine inspiration in a Rebbe. And then you have the simplicity of a Yid to follow the Rebbe's word. I mean, that he had to sure take a leap of faith over there to want to travel far away without having experience in the hat business, without having experience in that city, without knowing anyone there. And yet this Yid, the Rebbe, had told him to do this, and he went with total faith in the Rebbe, even though he wasn't really a full-fledged follower. Which I think is quite a story, quite a interesting point in its own right of how this man was willing to follow the advice of the Rebbe. I guess he saw the truth. He saw he saw that this is the word of Hashem. This is the man of Hashem here on earth.
That's right.
The Moses of the day. What did you say?
I said, that's right.
Yes.
You know, when you tell these stories, if I may,
yeah,
it's inspiring to all of us who are on the phones, on the computer. I'm on the phone, I have no computer. To uplift with all that's going on, to hear these Chassidic stories and to place ourselves in that environment. I went to the Ukraine 4 or 5 years ago. I saw how they lived, etc. And it makes you go on a different level than cable news and all the ramifications of all this nonsense. And it's in preparation. That's why you started this school, for Mashiach to come, to build us to that level, to go higher. And I'll tell you the truth. When I left Kiev to go to Vienna, I looked back, I said, oh, I'm so happy that my grandparents left here. But now that I went there, and the retelling that you're doing of these stories, I have a greater appreciation for what they did for me. Because I don't know if I would have been able to leave Kiev to come here in the early 1900s. But they did it, and I'm showing gratitude when I listen to your telling the story to my grandparents who are no longer here. It's a wonderful feeling, and I'm sure others that are listening to you feel the same way.
Loretta, were your
grandparents
from the Chassidic? Were they connected to the Chassidic movement, or?
My grandfather was from, but my grandmother, her 4 brothers came from Vilna, and they were Orthodox rabbis.
Wow.
But I've always, since I was a little girl and 4 years old and waved to the Rebbe, I felt a certain feeling. And it's getting better as I get older. Because all of the material success, all the other stuff, it's secondary.
Right.
Because it's not lasting. Because one day I won't be here, and my soul will be lasting.
That's right. Okay.
Not my body. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Loretta. I'm going to say one more story. And this story is the story of the Rebbe Rashad when he was younger, and how he used to play with his brother, Reb Zalman Aaron. He's called the Razah. And his older brother, the Razah, they used to play Rebbe Chassid, just like people play house and people play different. They played Rebbe Chassid, that the Razah would be the Rebbe, and the Rebbe Rashad, who was then a little kid, he pretended to be the Chassid. And so the Razah put on his, put on his hat, put on a hat, put on his long, his Shabbos clothes, and the Rebbe Rashad also he was preparing himself to go to his Rebbe, so he put on a gartel. Gartel is the little belt that you wear, that the Chassidim wear before they daven. So he put on this gartel because he's going to go enter the Rebbe's chamber. In a play, they were playing together, and he was entering his older brother, who he was playing Rebbe. So he went, and he went as having his private audience. So he walked in to the private audience to his older brother, and he says, the Rebbe asks him, "Is there something you want to discuss regarding your spiritual life?" So the Rebbe Rashad said, "Yes. I wasn't aware about the prohibition of cracking nuts on Shabbos. And I did that, and then I became aware that we're not allowed to crack nuts on Shabbos. In other words, crack the shell. At least according to the Alter Rebbe, it's not appropriate to crack the shell. You should shell nuts before Shabbos if you want to have nuts on Shabbos. So I would like to have some type of a kapara, atonement. What can I do for a tikkun to fix this sin that I cracked nuts on Shabbos?" This was his question. I don't know if it means he really did crack some nuts on Shabbos, or he's just asking this. And so his older brother said, "Well, to atone for this, you must never daven by heart. You always have to look inside the siddur. And if you pray, even though you know all the prayers by heart, because when you say them so many times, you learn them by heart." But he told him, if you want to atone, from now on, always read the prayers directly from the prayer book. Now, that's the end of that story. But that's the end of that meeting. And then afterwards, the Rebbe Rashad's mother saw him not davening from a siddur. So she said, "Oh, I heard you had you were playing, and your brother told you should daven from a siddur. Why don't you listen?" So the Rebbe Rashad said, "Well, when he said it to me, it really wasn't, he didn't act like a Rebbe when he said it. And I can't value it. And the reason why I say this is because when a Rebbe hears about someone's problems, a Rebbe has to feel bad, and he has to krechts a little. You crack nuts on Shabbos. Or your someone is not well, and this person's not well. You have to krechts. A Rebbe has a krechts when they hear something from their chassids, or from another yid, and you didn't do that. And my older, the Razah, didn't do that. So I knew that this is not a real Rebbe. His words mean nothing, and is insignificant. This is not the real thing. And that's a very I think it's a truthful story. Do we really feel for others when we hear their tsaras. A friend of mine told me that, when you go to the 25th anniversary of your graduating class, he says, a lot of the people that come, they come there just to see all the failures. They love asking people questions. Oh, what are you up to? What do you do for a living? And then this one says, well, I went bankrupt last year, and the other one's like feeling so good. Feeling so like, I guess I'm well off. At least look at this one just had this problem, and that one just had that problem. And sometimes we sort of enjoy hearing problems from other people, and that's an awful feeling, but that's, what can I say? It's part of the nature of man, and we have to correct ourselves, especially because you feel a lot better when you help someone, not when you see someone suffering. But somehow there's a natural inclination to feel good, to feel feel good that this, all these other people have all this tsaras. You sort of start feeling, proud, and really it's an awful way of living, but that's just the nature of man. So a Rebbe feels bad, has real empathy when they hear the tsaras of someone else, and when they feel bad, so they're able to come up with to understand, to when they feel the tsaras, they're able to feel what the right atonement will be, and what the right advice will be. It's that love, comes from that love and care that you have for someone else, and that's the message that I see from this story. If anyone would like to share any of their thoughts. We've got a very quiet audience today. Oh, good. Yes.
Well, it's kind of true that you should use the Siddur to pray with. I mean, I think that's good advice because we're often told to read it versus saying it by heart, so as not to, so as not to feel that we know it all, or I don't know what you want to call it, but like that. That's what I've been told. You should always read the Siddur, not say them by heart, if at all possible.
Right. That's true. Very, very good point. There is a statement that says, "Ois machtimais." The words, looking at the words, make you smart, and it's very. It's also very good for concentration. To look at the words, and it helps you with concentration, concentrating on the meaning and so on. So it's a very good advice. That's right. That should have been the obvious lesson also from the story. Thank you for bringing that out. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Well, not only that, I agree with her. When you're reading, you never know the circumstances of your life, that all you're reading is in your head. So when you are in a certain position where there is no shul and there are no sitters, you remember the words, and therefore you can share them with your fellow Jews. And I'm specifically talking about concentration camps.
Right.
All the people that knew the words. One woman would say this, one woman would say that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it came in very handy that they were able.
Yes, it did.
Right. They would remember little parts of the prayers, and they would help each other by reminding them. Yes. Okay. Well, everyone, have a wonderful day. Sei gesund. We'll see you tomorrow. Metz Hashem.
Sei gesund.